I want you to, all of you can see the image, right? And what I want is just let's find our center. You all have probably been, listening, taking in, absorbing things from morning, from some renowned speakers. So just let's recenter, and I want you all to see what catches your attention. Um, it could be a word, a thought, an image. Try to go more with the feeling and what's happening with your body. Don't get into the cognitive and head association with it, right? Don't try to start forming a story. And I just want you all to notice what's happening to you. And it's perfectly fine, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, anything, doesn't matter. And keep your thoughts for a second to yourself. I'll tell you all, I'll ask you all when you all can start sharing. We'll come back to this image in just a bit. Okay, so I want to start. I think one of the things that Zainab, right, probably two things which was missed out was I'm also involved with captive elephants, and I'm training to be a Jungian analyst. So we work a lot with images. And what I would recommend is keep a piece of paper and pen, and just jot down what comes up for you as we're going through this session, which hopefully I'm planning to wind up in like 40 minutes, and then we have time for question and answers. Without judging it, right? And keep it to yourself. This is for you, because my aim for this session is, one is of course to give you all a preview of what is sport and performance psychology, and more so my own journey being a female in the industry, female sports professional in the industry. And most importantly, I want to give you all something to take away, whether you get into the field, whether you find it interesting. What's important for me is there's something that you take away, something which can come back to you later at a point of time in your own life. Just something that you'd go with. Okay, so I want to start with a little anecdote, because stories are so inspiring, right? We all like stories, we all like to know stories, and this has to do with my own journey of getting into psychology. And this happened when I was very young, and it's something which my maternal grandparents are involved in. I heard this from my grandmother, and it was a dialogue between my grandparents actually. So I would often hear my granny say, there's a surplus of this, for example, sugar. And she would tell my grandfather, can you make sure to actually bring it back today when you're coming back? And I would keep hearing this journey. So, I'm doing the literal translation. So please, it might not be so flowy. So my mother tongue is Kannada. So I'm doing the literal translation of what I heard. And, you happen to hear this. And then once I heard an urgency in her voice, she's like, like, for example, there's rice is in surplus. So can you actually make sure to bring it today? And then I said, why do you need more rice if you already have in surplus? And this is a young child, see it from that perspective. And what my grandmother told me has stayed with me till date, is that, she sat me down and she told me, which I think we Indians must have heard in different ways from our own parents or grandparents, or must have come across, that she said, the Astu Devatas, which is the gods which bless, right? They may say Tatastu at any point of time. So be mindful of what you are actually focusing upon, right? And that impacted me quite a bit. I think that was a very, very important seed that my grandmother laid. And I think that is why I consider her my first psychologist, probably even before I knew the word psychology, or even before I kind of thought I'm going to get into this field. So why am I telling you all this story? Because if we look at psychology, sport and performance is again one branch. I was listening to the ma'am just before me talking on Indian perspectives, which is another very favorite topic of mine. Of course, I joined in towards the end. And ultimately, it's the umbrella. We all come under the umbrella of psychology, and our own heritage is so rich. Um, so the reason I'm telling you this is it kind of sums up what is sports psychology, what is it that we do. Till date, I have not heard a single athlete tell me that I don't want to win. Everyone says, I want to win, I want to do this, I want to make the country proud, I want to get a medal. But then what is the focus upon, right? What if I get beaten? What if this happens? What if I get injured? Oh, this one has trained more than me, right? So where is the focus going, right? And that is where the tatastu might happen. The gods may just say, okay, so be it, right? In different religions, you be hearing different terminologies, but the concept remains the same. And that's our job. It's always called the story behind the story, right? So whichever field of psychology you're in, you're just not listening to what your client or your athlete is telling you. You're listening to the background of that. And it is our job. I'm going to come back in the second section as to point out, where's the focus going and where do we want it to go, right? So I wanted to start with this. So that was one of my first influences. And the reason also why I want to start with this particular story is I get a lot of mails, a lot of queries, I think even on LinkedIn. Um, I want to become a sports psychologist. What's the way forward? And I started seeing a trend. It's more during IPL. It's more during, like, let's say, the league phase, or during major tournaments where maybe mental health or a psychologist or an athlete talks about it. And the reason I very often hear is I really like the sport or I really like the athlete. So now, my question becomes that why, right? Remember the first image I showed you. Find your why, right? So why do you want to get into a particular school of thought, be it sports psychology, be it any psychology, right? So, and I'm not looking for an answer immediately, right? In this age where you're so used to instant, right? I call it instant noodle age, instant age, where someone sends you, calls you, you're expected to respond immediately. So the question is, sit with the question for some time, even after you listen to me, even after you hear a few people. Sit with it and also see how does this connect to what's happening and what's coming about in my own space, in my own life. Because for me, when I think back, of course, that story stayed on. But when I became, like, I did not know why I chose psychology. And as I was sitting, with what to say and how to, bring across this message, what came across to me, which I think a lot of us would have heard, is Robert Frost, right? The road not taken. I think I can sum up my sports psychology journey that way. Because from where it came, I have no idea, but I just, said I want to take up psychology. Definitely not sports psychology. Sports psychology was not in my arena right in the beginning because I did not have that much of information. And I was told, what will you get in psychology? Very well intentioned. So I still went ahead with it. Um, the second influence is my father, who played a lot of sports. I was an athlete myself. And the love for the game and especially sportsmanship was inculcated from him. I would remember, because he played cricket and we used to watch a lot of cricket. I think we all watch a lot of cricket, in addition to, thankfully, a lot of other games now. I wouldn't want to watch when India was losing. And that's when he said, that's very bad sportsmanship. It doesn't matter win or lose, you need to support the team. And I think that's a very, very essential aspect of being part of this profession, because the amount of ups and downs you're going to witness, and you need to be in your center so that the athletes or the team can go through it all. You cannot keep fluctuating. Of course, you deal with your process in a different way, but not with the team. They're not your psychologist, you're their psychologist, right? So that's the second. And interestingly, when I finally went on to my master's, I was very keen on taking up clinical psychology as a career. And it was Dr. Sudha Bogle, I have to give her credit, who was instrumental in me even going for the interview at Sports Authority of India, because she actually literally had to say, do it for me, push me into it, because I said I have no idea about sports psychology. And she said it's basically applying the principles of sport and performance, of psychology to sport and performance. And I think that was an important trajectory which happened, because I really enjoyed the interview. I can without doubt say it was one of the best interviews I've attended in my life. It was challenging. Of course, they asked me questions, but it was also very open. It was something I realized that, that click which happens. I like this. My brain was really ticking because I was in sport. I came from a family in sport. I could understand the nuances which were happening, and I thoroughly enjoyed. Especially when I got in, the challenges. Of course, there were a lot of challenges which I did not handle very well right in the beginning. I'll come to that in a bit. But I felt, oh, I really like this. So what I'm trying to tell you all guys is, and please don't mind me saying guys, because I used to teach. So this is how I used to talk to the master students at, I would always call them guys. So which include the girls and guys. Okay. So also listen in and see what's really, am I fitting in? Is this suiting me? Am I content? Not just am I happy, and not just, the glitz and glamour, because I think a lot of people may be thinking just because you're getting recognition because you're with XYZ does not mean that I was given a golden platter. No. So the first, I also want to highlight that you make some choices, right? So when I finally got on this path, and then I decided to do my PhD. And the second decision after I finished was whether to come back from Australia or not. A place where sports psychology is very much accepted. But, do I want to stay there, or do I want to come back to India where it's still very niche? Do I come back to a place where I can make a name, and most importantly, what Indian sport needs, right? So that was the second choice. And it was not easy, right? I'll tell you all why it was not easy, because no one was waiting for me to come back. It was a good 3.5 years, though, of course, I'd done some work and research with National Cricket Academy. What was important was me to realize that by then I'd also started paying attention to what works for me. So I am an introvert, and I do not like a 9 to 5 job. Like, when it's flowing through, I can work for, like, let's say 10 hours at a stretch. And then sometimes I need a break. Or sometimes, the download just comes and you're done with the work. So I do not like very rigid structures. And also what happens is with national academies, you cannot work outside, let's say, national teams. So I knew I wanted to work. I knew I wanted to be a consultant. So I have time for myself, for my interests. So what I did, and by then I'd also realized, was that I was very passionate about teaching. So I went to my professor and got in. Long story short, but also I was a visiting faculty at Jain University. So it really helped me rebuild, right? You rebuild your system, you work your way through. And also what teaching gave me was that allowance to deal with what was coming up, right? And just process things. Like, it was a lot more creative energy in teaching, because you're not handling so much of heavy material, right? At the end of the day, psychology, we are dealing with emotions, we are dealing with performance. And performance, sometimes, I tell my colleagues, it's like sitting in a pressure cooker, especially when major tournaments are coming. We're all sitting in that. So it really balanced things out for me. And so what I would suggest is, keeping your options open till you can finally settle down at a rhythm going, this works for me. how much do I want to travel, and how much do I need to earn, let's say. And also, most importantly, the income comes in very slowly. So one of the toughest decision I had to take was to take a pause from teaching, because what started happening was, as much as I loved both sports psych and teaching, what eventually started happening was, just as the semester was peaking and finishing, the tournaments would be at its peak, especially the even semester with the dissertations, because I was teaching masters. And just as the tournaments were ending, what would happen would be the teaching would start. So I just felt I did not have a break at all. So that was the second call, and the reason I'm telling you all this is, you need this is a new field. It's not a field where you come in and things just magically happen just because you come in the media once. It is one of the fields where, yes, probably the psychologist, the whole team as such is given importance, and you are in the spotlight. But it is a gradual curve. You work your way through like anything else in life, right? I really wanted to bring this across very, very strongly, for the main reason that my motto has always been excellence over performance, right? So when you work towards excellence, performance will come. But if you work only towards performance and you're not focusing on what we say, the process, right? And only like, I want to be with XYZ, or what, I want to be with this team. This gives me attention. This gives me money, which is all great, which is important. I'm not saying no, but also, is that all? Does it really make you content? Like, if we remember positive psychology, right, Seligman, are you really satisfied? Are you making a difference there? To me, whether it's a 10-year-old, whether it's an Indian player, I'm always looking at India potential, because you're sitting with that potential. And I think that is the key element. And also, most importantly, is there a need for me here, is also something you need to sit with. um, can I bring my expertise, and does it match? So understanding who you are also becomes very, very important. To be very honest, I'm an introvert and I do not like media. I'm not interested. I find it very intrusive of my space. So, be it the IPL, be it anything, I'm always very clear that my interactions are very limited. Um, but also, putting it out there and knowing what your boundaries are, and knowing, most importantly, guys, how do you take care of yourself? I will come to the amount of trolling I faced, or especially being part of a team, especially being in public eye. There are a lot of challenges which come in with this sport, with this industry, and I'll keep touching on this. And also, we look at the questions that you all have, right? So this I'm trying to give you all the glimpse. 45 minutes, 1 hour is really a very short time to share your experience and to bring in the field. But what I'm trying to do is bring it across in a storyline, so that you'll get the essence of it. Okay. So the next section, what I want to do is take you all into, just some of the main chunks of sports psychology. So I'm going to share another image with you all. And I want you all to take a look again. And just there, see, one, what comes up for you again. And second, what stands out, and also, what does this mean? What does this curtail? I think most of us here are psychology students, right? What message is coming across to you all here? So I'm going to let this image be. And to me, sometimes I use this image. It's one of my favorite images, to explain sports psychology in itself. Because what you see right at the top, right, is what people see. Oh my God, such a wonderful life of the athlete. So and so is so good. And also to them, what appears. Then, if you see the reflection, the mirror reflection, it's what we call the iceberg profile, right? The things that the athlete themselves do not know. So if the top, represents your conscious, the bottom becomes your subconscious and unconscious, your beliefs, and doing that inner work to then find the gold. And here, that's why you're seeing these beautiful colored marbles, right? Um, and I think that's the beauty of sports psychology, because or any field of psychology for that matter, because one of the concepts that I want to bring in today and introduce is the concept of individual zone of optimal functioning, which was given by Yuri Hanin, where each one's zone is different. And if you remember the story I was telling you all, um, you know um, I have athletes saying, I want to achieve this, this, this. And I'll give you all the example of one of the very young swimmers. And he came from a family of awardees. And when I finally got down and I saw, you asked him, and he's like, I want to, win a medal at, I think he said, national level. And then I said, okay, so what do you think is required? And he did not have an answer. And then I was trying to go to, of course, they all say hard work. Everyone says hard work. And I also, a lot of times say, it's also smart work. And when you went deeper, right, this boy would bunk classes, very young boy as well. And he was also a referral. Someone else had come and, come to me and had won. So they thought that, okay, sports psychology is magic, which is a huge myth. And what came out, right? And this was just the first session. His profile was tipping really low, demotivated, and had no interest. So, when you dig deeper, you realize that um, this boy was more under pressure, right? As in, it was, I think, very well intentioned, but he really wasn't even enjoying. And I'm from Bangalore, and I know a lot of pools, at least at that point of time, did not have heating. I'm not sure how much of them have now. And these kids go at 4 o'clock, the pool is cold and you're swimming. And I'm thinking, why would, you put yourself or your child through it if this is really not the child's dream? So, sorry, I had to call the mother in and literally ask, whose dream is this? Whose goal is this? Because, I would really suggest you take your child um, for a holiday. He seems so burnt out, and then come back. And if he really isn't interested, don't really push him, let him live the life he wants to live. And I think that is paramount. So the reason I'm telling you all this is to identify what is the zone, what does this individual need. And I always, initially my sessions were a lot of individual, so I would always ask, how can I help? And then this is my philosophy, right? And I want to give this example of philosophy where um, which I think with time you learn that with trial and error as to what works. It's like cooking, because I remember burning rice when I first went to Perth, and my flatmate was making fun of me. And I kind of feel, you get into the field, you're testing the water, you're understanding the system, and then you kind of go, you're understanding yourself. Of course, understanding yourself is a lifelong process. And then you go, what is it I bring here? Right? And I want to explain this with a concept what we call emergence, which I very recently got to know, and I found it very helpful. It's something I understood with my work with, with my involvement with the elephants. And I was asked at my union interview that, oh, you work with elephants. And I said, I honestly don't know who works with who. And that's when, I don't know if my interviewer actually said the word emergence, but I later on understood that there's something which happens in the field, right? It's you bring yourself, and even over here, there's something happening. Though I cannot see y'all, there is a field created here. So I can be talking and I can be saying, but if you haven't brought yourself, there is nothing that I can do. But in that combined field, there is something else. That's where the magic happens. And especially, when I take group sessions, and this is what, I I say, I'm like, this is what I'm bringing in. And in sport, we always say, Dil se khela. I started hearing this especially with boxing, that so he or she did not play with heart or played with heart. That means bringing yourself fully, and that's where something happens. And that is the role of the psychologist, to kind of aid them. The magic is not done by you. Very clearly, that's something we need to be aware of. Can play a tiny bit in getting them aware to what's needed and aiding in that process. And I want to share this story, this incident, case study of a very young golfer, and she came from a very difficult childhood. So one of the very interesting things that the coach told me was that she loses from a winning position, and she does not like attention, she does not like to be in the lead. And he also told me that she has come from a tough place. So very young girl, hardly 15, 16. So I had to very, very gently go in. And what came out was, when she stood out was to get beaten, was physically when she was abused. So standing out for her had a very negative association. And this is where sports psychology involves a lot of neuropsychology. That's where the cutting edge research is happening, is creating this new neural pathway that, standing out can also be recognition, um, approval, support. And it's not just verbal talk, right? Verbally, we all know that. But helping her, one is deal with this negative, make peace, hold space for that, and then slowly start building on this positive association. And then that girl went on to win, right? Winning was one, but after that, she would tell me. So I had to do some inner child work with her as well. And she would come back and say, um, ma'am, I sat with what you said. I sat with that little girl. And these are touching moments where you have really touched someone's life. Um, so why I'm telling you all is, I want you all to understand that it's not just about motivation, it's not just about goal setting, it's so much beyond. It is about taking the whole individual. And I think one of my first challenges, first learnings, and I think my first appreciation came when I was working with one of these medal prospects way back when I started. I did not even know she was a medal prospect. And then the camp shifted to Patiala from Bangalore, and she refused to work with any other sports psychologist there. So a letter came that, can you all send Chaitanya? And I still did not have a PhD at that point of time. So, and I very clearly remember the ED teams, which is the executive director, saying, this is the first time it's happened. So, though there are a lot of camps, we'll have to relieve you and send you to Patiala. And I started working with her. And what happened was, eventually I started working with the whole team, because there were quite a few of them there who were prospects. It turned out that the entire team wanted me to travel. And that was, I think, one of the times, or few of the very few times, where a psychologist were traveling with the contingent. But I was way junior, right? And there was this very senior coach who very recently passed away. And amazing gentleman, what an empowering coach would be. His way of appreciating you was, he'd say, come with me for a walk in the ground, when there's training. So when he said, when he called me, I was quite surprised. And then he said, the entire team, including me, wants you, but according to seniority, you can't go. And and I said, that's perfectly fine, sir. I was, I know my work is back end. I was not doing the work that I'm going to travel with the team. In fact, I did not even know that was going to happen. He touched my head and said, "Bahut acha kiya, beta." And I feel that was huge. That appreciation, that acknowledgement. Of course, that athlete went on to break the games record, and she called me. And there was a letter from the sports ministry. Right now, this was not something which came out in the media, but if you ask me, I think that was very, very touching for me. Right? The fact that it came from a coach who is so well known, who appreciates you, and knowing that you did your part, whether you go, and of course, everyone who's in sport, whether it's an athlete or a support staff, to don the Indian cap, Indian colors is always the dream. I have worked with Indian teams. I have traveled with leagues. I haven't yet traveled with a contingent because it is difficult. So it's also been a conscious decision. But yes, that's a dream which will hopefully come true one day. Why I'm telling you all this is, guys, it's 360-degree approach, what we call, in psychology, because you don't work in tandem just by yourself. So I never say I did this and a magic happened, or going and putting up that this is my team. I think especially as a psychologist, when your team doesn't perform, when they're low, it could be that the team has won, but like there could be a player who's really down. You're still part of it. How do you support him or her or the team? And I'll give you an example of one of these young cricketers who was trolled very badly because he dropped a catch. And I remember him telling me, he said, "Ma'am, dar lagta hai abhi. I get scared, I don't want the ball to come to me." And that is heartbreaking. So now this is where, again, it's not just cognitive talk. Even he knows that don't pay attention. Now, even if I tell you all don't go on social media, we all know that, there's only so much of social media, which is good. But then can you really tell the younger generation to cut it off, right? So what do you do? That's where you explain it with, let's say, a Levin's field theory. I'm being mindful of the time, right? And going, whose opinion are you listening to? Who comes in your inner circle? And then also knowing how much of what can you share with the coach, or let's say, the core team that you work with, knowing that this particular person, without giving out any details, would really do with some appreciation and approval. So understanding the personality of each individual, even within the team, that's where your eyes off comes in. That's where that concept. And then when you're holding the whole team, you're also trying to go, how do we come together as a team? So it's very important to form that connect, not just with the players, but also with the support staff. With time, I've developed some really good friends, or with the colleagues in the industry. And we always say, we're sitting in pressure cooker. It's like having a pressure, you're sitting in a cooker. It could be even when an athlete is injured, in 6 months you need to get him or her back. So you can only imagine the amount of pressure on the physio, on the SNC coach, on the entire, not just the athlete, so everyone, right? So there's a lot of pressure. In fact, Abhinav Bindra had made this very interesting statement just as India went into lockdown last year, where he said how athletes learn to cope with Tokyo, uncertainty, COVID uncertainty prior to Tokyo will determine how they're going to perform, because uncertainty, and we're all sitting with it, right? Especially this second wave has hit our country in particular so badly. um, Uncertainty is a part of sport as well. So how you manage, and also how do you take care of that. Like, you have to learn how to de-stress, you have to learn how to process, you have to, I remember again, one of my mentors had said every psych needs a psych. And most fields in psychology now has supervision. So it's very important to have a supervisor. It's important to have a peer group, of people in the same field, with who you can debrief, with who you can process your emotions, what comes up. um, that's very, very important. This is what I wanted to say. And the other thing which is most important is knowing how to handle failure. My all-time favorite is Rahul Dravid. And he always says, and our own ex-president Dr. Abdul Kalam had said, failure is the stepping stone to success. So failure is very much a part and parcel of sport. So knowing how to work with it. And I think very recently Virat Kohli himself said that a very young fan asked him, so what have you learned? What's your message? And he said, you learn a lot from failure. Success doesn't really teach you much. And I think there was this very beautiful story. I don't remember the name of the businessman. He said, we have to listen to stories of failure, because what we see is people saying everything's fine. Of course, now we see a lot of athletes, we see a lot of people coming out with vulnerability, saying what they've gone through, how they overcame their challenges. And I think that's what I'm trying to put across to you all as well, that it comes with its ups and downs. So that's what I wanted to bring together in this section. And I'm going to go into the third section, which I think is what a lot of you might actually have a question about, is how do I get into the field? So my message is this. I can't answer that question. But I think if you can start understanding, I will tell you all the way I went through, and then if you decide and you feel, and don't take the decision in a haste, but let life also guide you, and see, is this really what I want? Is this where I'm called upon? Is this the place I'm really contributing? Because I remember what Sakshi Malik actually, I think I heard once, was she said, of course, Sakshi Malik is India's bronze medalist who broke the jinx at Rio, right? Um, she said, yes, the medal was what every athlete dreams of. And also, when I go to a village, a remote village, and a young girls especially come and tell me that, Didi, aapke wajah se, because of you, we can practice. You have made an impact. You have influenced, right? And that's where you become from successful to inspiring. So, whether it's sports, whether it's performance, whether it's any psychology, any place, actually, what I always tell is, don't just dream about working with XYZ, right? I never said I want to work with this, I want to be with RCB, I want to be with Indian team. Let it come to you. Let your work speak for yourself. And then even before I joined RCB last year, I actually chewed upon it, because I know how much of limelight you're going to be in. And what I want to actually share is, wherever you are, start from there. Because people ask me, what's the job criteria? Will I get a job? I don't know, guys. How can I really answer that? Like, if I had asked that question to any of my teachers, can they really answer it? Right? Because one is life, the other is not just hard work, but like, um, where are you maneuvering, and where are you channeling your energy? So start where you are, because sometimes, I know they take in people who just finished, freshers, and then some coaches question me as to how can someone like this work with the national team. I've been asked this, and I always say, I don't know, sir, I didn't take that decision. So I always say, start where you are. If you're in school, and if you're an athlete yourself, any kind of discipline, okay, what's happening around me? What's where am I being impactful? Is it positive or is it negative? If you're in a college, what can I do with any of the teams over there? Then, can I intern in a place? Can I gather? Can I read? You guys have so much of information, right? That's something I had heard a sports psychology lecture once, very honestly. So that's why I was so shocked when I was told to go for the interview. So, what I'm trying to tell you all is, don't take a decision in a haste. Don't take it just because there's constant information, but look at it as, is this where I can really bring in something? And that's the question I sit with, right? Like, you always have to go, there are always going to be, when you choose one thing, there's something else which you've left behind. So what's the choice you're making? And if, like, when I got involved with the elephants, and it's very recent, but honestly, I can tell you it's one of the most fulfilling aspects of my life. And they enrich me as a person, and that learning even to what I bring into my field. So, look at where can I impact. And also, guys, yes, I know there's a lot of questions, and I'm guessing it might even be there. This is something I get asked, so that's how I planned my talk. Is what should be the course? So I did not take up sport and performance psychology as well directly, because, of course, like I told you, it was not my immediate intention. So my base was actually a master's in clinical psychology, and I find it very helpful because, the whole history taking, the going to the root of the problem, is something which has really come in handy even here. And also, when I know an athlete is tipping beyond normal sport and performance anxiety, beyond, or let's say, a body image which is tipping towards an eating disorder, I know where I need to pass them on, and we need to get more support, right? So, and my own PhD was also from the industrial sector, from management. So again, I had a little bit of little, I won't say I know the whole of industrial psychology, but some base. So it's okay, start where you can, and then if you find a place where even if you can do an online course. And guys, at the end of the day, right, it's what you do on the field. This is something I have tried doing when I was teaching. That what's going to be your philosophy, what are you going to talk, how are you going to open, what are you going to do this person stuff. And trust me, these are the things which comes. I'll give you one example. Again, it was, I think, during that same camp, 400-meter runner. We've all seen Milka Singh movie, right? um they don't, I've not seen anyone throw out blood. Maybe that was a movie thing, but they vomit. And it was almost a fag end. I think there was one last 400-meter round which was left, and one of the athletes came and said, nahi hota ma'am, 100% nahi hota, I can't do 100%. So I said, it doesn't matter, just go finish this round and come. When he came back, that was 100%. And then he said, Sahi bola. Because at that point of time, what was important for him was to complete that round, right? It was not about, I need to cut it in so much time, because had he stopped, what would have stayed in his head is, I didn't finish, right? And that was practically the end. The team was going to travel. So it was very important for him to be in that frame where, okay, I completed this. So your theories become very secondary. And I think even when I was approached by 3G, I said, I'm not going to talk on theories. I'll bring you what the field is about, understanding the field per se. That's a different kind of thing. But what happens here is, when you're trying to introduce, I think you want to know the nuances of what happens in the industry, right? And your own experience. So get down, and it's no matter how much you read, trust me, it's finally when you go there, okay? It's finally, you have to get down there. And I want to mention one of these incidents. It was my favorite sports psychologist, Dr. Kenneth Raveza. When I was attending one of the workshops, conferences in Sydney, and he said, "You're going to see people like this, right?" He said, "Don't ever think you're going to get a red carpet welcome." And he was talking. This was one of the top psychs at that point of time, and he was talking or working with some top basketball team league. So that's a message which has stayed with me. So don't think I'm going to go cut it off, clean bowl them, make an impression. Don't. Just go with, I'm bringing myself. There's something I have here, and I'm going to bring that. And there's a reason this particular team association has come to me. And then they need to bring themselves, and that's where the magic happens. So it's okay. Start where you are. Let the ripple effect happen. Let whatever you choose, whether it is sport and performance, whether it is Indian psychology, I'm impressed with the number of branches we have in our field and what 3G has brought together. You're making an impact, and who knows, who doesn't know is very secondary, right? Sometimes some people get attention, but again, like how our own athletes get, they're also pulled down. It's like the river flowing. Today is one day, one person's time, tomorrow it's another person. So don't just run behind fame, glory. There's a lot to this industry beyond that. And I want to finally bring my talk to a conclusion with what Dr. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he's a Russian who talks on the flow state, right? I'm going to read that out for you all because it's something I really, really like. So he says, you know that what you need to do is possible to do, even though difficult, and sense of time disappears. You forget yourself, you feel part of something larger. And once the conditions are present, what you are doing becomes worth doing for its own sake. And he's a flow researcher, what we call the flow state, and in sports psychology, in sport we call the zone, right? So he's been looking this across discipline for over 30 years, and I find this quote very inspiring. And yeah, and I would say the learning and my journey still continues. um, so with that, I thank you for your attention, and I hope this was helpful, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was very, very fruitful for anyone who is not even just interested in sports psychology, but basically psychology. But you, because you put in the attitude that is needed when you think of doing something like psychology. So I'll directly move to the questions that we have for today. So the first question is: do you need to have a background in sports psychology in sports to pursue sports psychology, or does it even count if you have a sports background?
Question is sports background.
Yes,
Do you
like if
need
you're
a
a sports person, does it help if you pursue sports psychology?
so I think it would help if you do have a sports background, very honestly, because I've been told by quite a few journalists that, can you hear me clearly? Um, that, Chaitanya, you make sense, or Doc, you make sense. We don't understand a lot of what others say. So, but having said that, it doesn't mean that someone who doesn't or hasn't been in sport cannot. You really need to understand. And when, like, I don't know all the disciplines, but I'm honest enough, when someone, I remember a triple jumper was talking some lingo, and I said, can you actually explain what it is? And we looked up a video, and I'm like, okay, now I get it, because when I'm trying to guide him or her, I need to understand. So it would help if you have. If not, you really need to at least be passionate. If you're not, then this is like, definitely, it's like saying, you keep pizza in front of me and I absolutely don't like pizza. It's doesn't make sense, right? So yes, I would say it would be good you've been involved in some level of sport.
That's correct, ma'am. So the next question is there any scope in sports psychology in India? And if yes, how to pursue it? What is the process?
So this is the exact, I think, Angela, right? This was the exact discussion I had with Angela when I spoke, and I'm really thankful to you guys, because I think I'm going to keep this recording and send it to everyone who asks me questions on sports psychology, because my whole talk focused on this, right? It pretty much focused. I really don't have an answer to this, guys, because um, if you had asked me, like, it's been 15 plus years in this field, there was zero scope. So if you're going to go behind scope, right, I don't know, like, it's a budding, sports is a really booming industry, but how many sports psychs can the industry also have? I don't know. So it really, that's where I said, find your why. I think that's very important. um because see, even when I came back, I stopped taking money from my parents by the time I was 23. So I funded my own PhD. I actually paid my own masters as well. So for me, there was no way that I could lean back. So I was in teaching, and teaching gave me some stability, right? Because I think when you go outside India is when you realize that we Indians are so over cocooned. So what's the reason you're getting into something? Like if you ask me, is there scope in like the elephant work I do? I don't know in wildlife work, but I don't care, because for me, that's my passion. So if you're passionate and you have support and you know how you can get some stability in, then it's the road not taken. That's exactly why I said my journey is that. So you need to see, are you ready to take that road not taken? I feel it's unfair for me to say yes or no, guys. That's why I said it's your story. It's you guys have to, because if I say yes, it is there and go ahead, I will probably sound like I'm standing for elections, which I'm not, with all due respect. So that's a call. You need to weigh the pros and cons, weigh the pros and cons. And if you're really passionate, and also please don't target, I want to go just because I want to meet a Virat Kohli, or I want to meet a Sachin Tendulkar, or XYZ. That you can meet even outside, or a Sunil Chetri. You don't need to become a sports psychologist, because you're not functioning as a fan over there, because then no one's going to respect you. So
That's
yeah,
right.
sorry, I'm probably not the way. I don't give polite answers. I give very clear-cut answers, and because I think I work in this field where you also know that sometimes you do shake up people, and I don't want to just be all nice. I want to give a clear picture so that it's students can really, or like budding professionals can go ahead and decide what is it that they really want to do.
Yes, ma'am. A reality check is always better than having something coated with something. So in that way, I have someone has asked a very personal question related to them. So their question is that I am a gold medalist, a gold karate gold medalist, but when I win a bronze, it's not acceptable to me. I think I was capable of winning a gold. I feel depressed after that competition. I wanted to ask you, do you suggest something to overcome this behavior?
Okay, that's practically something that you would deal in a session. But I think I will again come back to what Dravid said. You're not going to go and win every match, right? Every time the team goes in, I remember even every time Sachin went in, people would expect 100, and that's practically not possible. So if you are capable, and that's always good, that okay, where you stand. What is it that's needed? I know I'm giving a very cognitive answer. What is it that went missing there, and what is it that I need to do for the future? So I also want to just bring out, we use these words depression, anxiousness very lightly, right? And especially as psychologists ourselves, what we need to be clear is mood swings is something even I have, right? A low mood is even something I have, but that does not mean I am depressed, right? So feeling low, yes, you were capable of a gold. If you got a bronze, feel bad, a loss, yes, we feel bad, and then we move on, right? Because I think the beauty with sport is there's another tournament coming, there's another match, unless you know what, it's the fag end of your career. So I think stay with it, feel it all, and then go, okay, actually, I think also it's a good question, because there's an activity which I do. Do we have time? Or is there something?
You can actually continue, ma'am. We are anyways hoping for a break, so you have about 5 to 10 minutes if you.
Okay. So, basically, let's say a recouping athlete who's coming back, I always tell them, or let's say someone's gone through a lean phase, this is one chapter, right? You hold space, you work around, and then you go, what's the next chapter going to be? So, I think that's what's important. And that's where, remember, the golfer I was talking about as well, we create next, what we're trying is a new neural pathway. So here you've already achieved. What you need to do is refocus back your attention to this, but also deal with what you're feeling. I think that's important.
That's correct, ma'am. So another question that we have is, can the quality of leadership and team building be developed by training?
What psychology training?
Yeah.
There's this Dr. Mehali. I would really suggest you guys look him up. And also, I remember one of my colleague, I was the moderator. She was talking of excellence. I don't know if this madam before me spoke. Indian psychology talks a lot about excellence. So, first that leadership needs to start with you. Also, your leadership team, right? Like when I work with teams, especially CEO, your cricket, I mean, your operations director, your head coach, then the captain. That group is then going to trickle down. What's the influence? So is it relational? It's not like, we do some team building. I'm really not a big fan of just doing team building with teams. I think it's important. I'm not saying no, but I think also what's very important is really understanding each individual, understanding the dynamics and what's the trickle down, because then you know what is going to come from then it becomes bottom up. It has to be top down as well.
That's great, ma'am.